With new McValue at McDonald's, you get more than you expect. So after a long day, buy a double cheeseburger and add a McChicken for $1. Because saving with deals is always on the menu. With new McValue.
Prices and participation may vary. Valid for item of equal or lesser value.
Cannons, muskets, marching orders.
Route step! Route step!
This is what's bound to rattle your ears if you go to a reenactment of a Civil War battle.
Low! Low!
It's an incredible spectacle, but the most interesting part of it all might just be the people who put on the show.
I hope you're as mystified and enjoy it as much as I do.
What do you think people get wrong most about reenactments? What's sort of like a common misconception?
That people have a side and they're that thing.
Probably that we're a bunch of racist idiots running around. I mean, that's hardly the case. They're very passionate about American history and about portraying what actually happened.
I'm Anissa Khalifa. This is The Broadside, where we tell stories from our home at the crossroads of the South. This week, producer Charlie Shelton-Ormond literally stumbles onto a battlefield and explores the fascinating culture of Civil War reenactors.
Forward! March!
All right. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a minute since we've been across the table from each other in a studio.
Yes, excited to chat.
Yeah, so you recently went to a Civil War reenactment.
I did.
Tell me about this. Where was it? What did you do? What did you see?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to Bentonville, which is about an hour southeast of Raleigh in rural eastern North Carolina. That's where the Bentonville battlefield is. So this is a state historic site, and it's where the largest and the last battle in North Carolina in the Civil War took place.
Okay.
So I went to the 160th anniversary reenactment on a sunny Saturday afternoon in mid-March.
So why did you want to go to this reenactment, especially like on a weekend, on your precious Saturday? Why did you want to go to this Civil War reenactment?
Well, I've lived in the South my entire life, but I have never been to a Civil War reenactment. So I wanted to see what the reenactment looks like in action.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I wanted to hear from people why they come out to do this 160 years later after the Civil War and after this battle actually happened.
So you show up. What do you find?
Yeah.
Like, what's the scene there?
What really blew me away as soon as I arrived was the sheer scope of this event. All right, I'm sitting in traffic right now. We got about a half a mile's worth of traffic. Meanwhile, on the side of the road, we've got some horses, a couple carriages going by. So I arrived at the site to a big field, and half the field was a parking lot that was quickly filling up with cars. And the other half was full of these big canvas tents. And inside the tents were people mostly selling period-specific clothes and even, soldiers' uniforms or other items that looked like they could have been from this time period.
That was probably the coolest thing I've ever bought in my entire life.
Likewise, it's not like these things are super crazy accurate.
There were folks who were doing demonstrations of weapons from the Civil War.
A revolver is something that typically goes in the left hand.
And bordering this field was some woods. And inside the woods is where the soldiers, the reenactors, had set up their camps, where some of these reenactors had been staying for a couple days now, leading up to this big event on the weekend.
Shoulder on!
In total, there were 1,500 reenactors.
Forward, march!
It was actually mostly split even between Confederate and Union. And 1,500 is a large number, but that's actually nothing compared to the actual battle. The actual Battle of Bentonville had 80,000 soldiers in total. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So definitely not recreating the scale of the battle, even though there's a lot of people here.
Mm-hmm, that's right. Yeah. They are reenacting parts of the Battle of Bentonville here on a much smaller scale. in terms of the people attending the event that day, there was an estimated 30,000 people.
Wow.
Now, all of them didn't go to the battle reenactment later in the afternoon, but that just goes to show how big of an event this actually is.
What brought y'all out here today?
It's his birthday. That's what he wanted to do.
Whoa, happy birthday. Yeah, are you excited?
Yeah.
It felt like this mix of historical theater with the reenactment, people camping out and dressed up in period-specific clothes, mixed in with education, people going to these demonstrations and learning more about the time period, and then kind of a sprinkling of something like a county fair in there too.
I was told that after the fight, he could go shoot some of the guns.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my
He
gosh.
told me.
You got a toy gun ready to go. Yeah.
More company. Red shoulders. March.
So did you talk to any of these reenactors?
I definitely did.
How are you, sir? Good morning. I'm assuming you're a reenactor?
Yes. We're going to get those wascally webbles.
One of the first folks I talked to was Lynn Bull. So Lynn is from Goldsboro, which is pretty close to Bentonville. And Lynn was portraying a Union soldier, and he said that he's been doing reenactments since 1969.
Dang.
And he became interested in the Civil War well before that.
My dad took me to Gettysburg when I was in third grade, and as he put it, everything went downhill from there.
Now, Lynn has been doing these reenactments for a while, and he is a little bit older. I'd say he's in his early to mid 70s. And he says that it's been hard to get young people out there to do these reenactments and kind of continue this tradition.
We're aging out. Unless they get some younger people in, they're all going to kind of die off.
But I was actually surprised to see a lot of young folks out there at Bentonville participating in the reenactment. They were teenagers, folks in their 20s and 30s, taking part in this event in all aspects. There were people dressed up as soldiers, and there were other folks dressed up as civilians. There were kids running around. There are age requirements for going on the actual battlefield and carrying a rifle, but there were people really of all ages participating in the event.
I've been doing this and been into history since I was little, maybe 10 years old.
I talked with a young man named Moses who traveled up from Atlanta to be a part of this reenactment, and he is 15 years old, and he's been
15?
doing... Yeah, he's 15 years old. Yeah.
It's something I have a passion for and I love, so yeah.
And you said you've been doing this for 5 years?
Yeah.
How many reenactments has that been?
A little over a dozen. Yeah.
Have they all been Civil War, or have they been different kinds?
They've all been Civil War.
Okay.
So was it mostly men who were doing the reenactment of the battle, or were there women?
It was mostly men, but there were women dressed up in sort of antebellum dresses, but there were also women dressed up as soldiers planning to go out on the battlefield and fight.
I do both roles, so we do soldier and we get all dressed up some days. So I love it. It's a good time.
McKenna is in college, and she says that she actually chooses whether she wants to dress up as a soldier or in a dress according to the day.
Yeah, based on the day and just how I'm feeling. So I wanted to shoot a musket today. So tomorrow, tonight, I'll be a lady, and then I'll do the same thing in the morning. So it just depends, especially with the weather.
Yes.
I like to base it off of weather.
Yeah.
Because some days it can be super hot, and I kind of just want to be in a dress and not out in the field.
Hydrate all the time.
Yeah.
Whether even if it's cool out, you still hydrate. More spectators will drop than we will because we're very disciplined about that.
McKenna was with Melody, and Melody is a little bit older, and she said that she's been doing this for 14 years.
My goal is actually to do a battle in every state that they actually fought in.
Oh, cool.
So that's
Nice.
one of my little bucket lists.
And Melody said that she always chooses to be on the Union side because she has ancestors on that side.
My ancestor fought for the 10th Massachusetts and the 37th Massachusetts, so I would never put on gray.
But someone's family roots are definitely not the only thing influencing which side people join.
So what are some other ways that people decide?
A lot of people think that you are on a side even. And no, it's
I spoke with a man who goes by Silas Tackett. That's kind of his reenactment moniker. And he came all the way from Seattle, so all the way from the West Coast. He was dressed as a Confederate soldier, And he said most of the time he chooses whether to be Confederate or Federal, depending on what's going on with that specific reenactment.
I'm going to an event. What's the cool thing I want to do at this event? And that's the thing I'm going to do. And it's also, well, where my friends also go. So I want to go with my friends.
Silas has been doing this for 30 years, and I asked him how he's seen it change. And he said in recent years, he's actually seen politics become less prevalent.
Mostly been since the 150th anniversaries that's when I've noticed there's been more of an effort. It's like, that needs to go, and that needs to go, and that needs to go.
The 150th was 10 years ago, in 2015. And that's a time when a lot of Confederate iconography, like the presence of Confederate monuments in the South and the Confederate flag, was getting more critical attention writ large. And Silas says that seeped into the reenactment world as well.
And it's hard to let things go. We don't want to do that. But in the long term, yeah, it's the right thing.
Can't judge people who lived back then with the mindset from today, in my opinion. You have to take it all in stride, and, you know, all the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's what we did, it's who we are, and we've grown from that, and it's a beautiful thing.
On that point, obviously there's a Confederate side to the battle, but did you feel that there was a Confederate presence in the sense of, like, were there people with Confederate flags? Did you see any people who seemed to have this lost cause ideology?
So there were definitely Confederate flags amongst the Confederate reenactors, right? That's just going to be a part of the event. There were also people who were spectators who had clothes that had the Confederate flag on them. And right outside of the parking lot, there was a statue of a Confederate general that is there all the time. And there was a tent with a group of older white men who had a bunch of Confederate shirts, buttons, flags, etc., with language around Southern heritage. But there wasn't really a ton of people like that. I think it's worth noting that the Battle of Bentonville is one where the Confederates lost. It was the last battle in North Carolina before the Confederacy surrendered in the state. So the fact that this was a prominent loss for the Confederacy might influence the legacy of it amongst people who are really passionate about their Confederate roots and ancestry.
Yeah, I mean, the question of race can't really be ignored here, right? My assumption, I think a lot of people's assumption would be that most of the people who showed up to do this reenactment were white men. What was the racial demographic?
Most of the reenactors were white men, definitely, but not exclusively white men. I saw men of many different racial backgrounds. I did not see anybody dressed as a Confederate who is black. Moses, the teenager from Atlanta, is black, and he says that he always chooses the same side in any reenactment.
I'm always on Union, yeah.
So this is my first reenactment, so I might get the bug. We'll see.
Have fun. You'll like it.
Okay. So when I was talking with Moses, I realized that it was actually getting close to 2 o'clock, and that's when the battles were set to begin. And people were starting to venture toward the battlefield, and there's the big field where the battle takes place, and there's a hill atop of the field where spectators gather to watch it all happen. And, you know, I thought, like, that's not really the view that I want to get. So when I was talking with Moses, I saw a group of Union soldiers on horses go by and then kind of disappear into the woods. So I decided to try and follow them. All right, trekking through the woods. Hopefully I'm going in the right direction. Now, I lost the soldiers on horseback, but that wasn't going to deter me. I was still committed to finding a group of soldiers. Well, got a little horse poop on my shoe. Cross that off the checklist for the day. Trekking through the woods, and I realized, I was going in the right direction because I kept on finding some horse poop on the ground.
I love this. He follows a trail of horse poop.
Yeah, that's
the battlefield.
That's my trail. Yeah, I know I'm in the right direction. And then that was promising, but when I really knew I was getting close was when I started to hear the music. All right, through the woods, I've stumbled upon Union soldiers. After venturing through the woods for about a half a mile, I finally found about 300 Union soldiers waiting in the wings, waiting for their orders to march into the battlefield.
Potatoes! Right shoulder, jab! Right shoulder, jab! Oh!
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, it's time for battle.
They're all lined up, getting ready to flank the Confederates. We'll see. We'll find out.
Okay, so you've trekked through the woods following a trail of horse droppings, and you found this group of soldiers. Who are they?
Yeah, so these folks are all a part of these reenactment groups, really across the country, that apply to be a part of reenactments like this one at Bentonville. This reenactment is put on by the state government, so it's very official, and all these reenactment groups are approved.
I'm an entrepreneur of business. I live, breathe, and die on my phone, and I turn my phone off for 3 days when I come to these things.
They really come from all walks of life. They are lawyers, they're teachers. I talked with somebody who's a clothing designer. Like, they really come from all places.
And I still get the night before jitters before I leave. Then it still makes me feel like a 8-year-old boy. So
many folks are ex-military who see these reenactments as an avenue to tap into some of that camaraderie that they experienced in the armed forces without, the danger and the risk that comes with being in an actual battle.
Yeah, I feel like this would be something that would feel very familiar to them, but also exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Boys, get fired up, get fired up.
So while the brigade was waiting for their marching orders to enter the battlefield, I talked with somebody about the rank of all the troops. How do you decide who's a private and, who's a colonel? And he said that one part of it is about experience, and then another part is people just ask.
Donovan over here is a captain, so he's running all these sergeants who are obviously 3 or 4 times his age, and it's his first time.
Cool.
He's trying it out, and he'll either be good at it or he'll be bad at it, and he'll turn around and say, I'll go back and do something else next time.
Which I thought was an interesting sort of democratic way of going about organizing your troops.
Yeah, definitely not like the real military.
No, not quite. No, not quite.
Company, attention company.
So all the soldiers are waiting in line, and then they finally get their orders to march out there and join the battle. Do some fake fighting. Other Union soldiers and Confederate soldiers are coming from other different parts of the field. I'm with this brigade over here in the corner. I was like, okay, I can't follow them all the way into the battlefield. So let me hop into a bush and get out of danger's way and see how this all unfolds. Hiding out in a bush right now as they all line up.
So here you are in your bush. Is this battle scripted and choreographed, or is this more of like they have a general idea of what they're going to do, but they're kind of ad-libbing? How does this work?
It's mostly scripted, and I think with some improvisation, right? Okay. So they were doing specific battle scenarios on this day. The actual Bentonville battle lasted over 3 days, and so they were doing specific parts of that 3-day battle. Got a whole cloud of smoke coming off of the battlefield from all the musket fire. And so it's a scripted event in the sense that they have the general movements of the battle, but then within that, I think you can do some improvisation of folks can choose when they get shot, when they get injured. Could be they're just tired and they want to take a break.
Yeah, I'm assuming all of the ammunition is firing blanks.
They're all firing blanks. Want to make that very clear. There are no actual cannonballs being fired. There's no actual bullets being fired from these rifles. Safety is a big, big priority for them. And then while the battle is happening, there's also this person who is talking over a loudspeaker where the spectators are gathered, kind of narrating what's happening in the battle with this sort of flowery language, like a billow of gun smoke cascaded over the battlefield as the Confederates reformed their line.
That is so cool, actually. So it's like a sportscaster almost for the battle, but using period appropriate language.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to zoom out for a second and talk about Bentonville as a space, Bentonville has been doing these large-scale battle reenactments since 1990. And they've done this reenactment every 5 years since then, excluding 2020 because of the pandemic. They've been doing living history events at Bentonville since the 1960s. Now, in the early 1960s is actually when Civil War reenactments experienced this wave in popularity.
So what was the initial kind of idea behind these? Was it just like, let's bring history to life?
It was pretty directly caused by the centennial of the Civil War. I think it's interesting to note that at the same time, the United States was experiencing a lot of major social, cultural, and political shifts. Meanwhile, the Civil War reenactments are having this moment, these events that are really rooted in looking back to the past.
Actually, Europe has a pretty big Civil War following, believe it or not. So they'll do stuff like this in Europe.
While I was safely in my bush, I struck up a conversation with a man named Peter, who is actually from the Wilmington area. And he's a veteran. He served in Afghanistan. And he talked about doing reenactments in the United States of other wars, too.
I do a lot of World War II and Vietnam stuff as well.
Oh, cool. And that happens in the States, too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they do that all across the country. A lot of actually, like Tennessee and Kentucky have a lot of like terrain that we try to get, especially in the summertime. It gets nice and hot and humid, and there's a lot of ravines and stuff.
So with World War II and Vietnam War reenactments, it seems like it's this pursuit of finding things as close as possible in the United States. But with Civil War reenactments and Bentonville specifically, Bentonville is pretty much unchanged from when this battle actually took place in 1865. The topography is pretty much the same. So after about 30 minutes, this brigade that I've been tagging along with takes a break. They come off the battlefield to where they first entered, to where my safety zone is.
Load! Load!
How'd that go?
It went okay. This will definitely go a lot faster.
The Confederates have advanced, so this brigade needs to take a beat and regroup.
So we're planning to retake our position.
All right, good luck. All right, thank you. In ranks, left, face!
And then after a couple minutes, they all get ready again and march back out there.
Shoulder, arms, forward, march!
Kept firing away, and eventually the reenactment reached its grand finale. All right, I'm right in the thick of it right now. I'm behind the Union line. Rifles are going wild. There's a bunch of gun smoke. It's the grand finale here. Guns ablazing. Reenactors are falling to the ground. There's hooting and hollering. And then there's victory. The Union side wins.
That was a heck of a battle. Morning, folks.
Yeah, after game report, how you feeling?
You know, we just went out there, we did our best, you know, we really gave it to them, they pushed back, and we just did what we had to do. You know?
What are you feeling? I'm tired. I don't know.
By shooting at you, you don't worry about being tired.
All right, boys.
Your gun is not
nap
heavy.
time.
You're not tired.
So Civil War reenactments are something that, like, everybody knows it's a thing. Many of us just have heard about it. We maybe sometimes make fun of it. I mean, but most of us probably haven't been to one. After spending this whole day with this group of people, what were your biggest takeaways?
I was curious if people were doing more of an impression of this time period, or if they were really trying to be as authentic as possible. And it's a mixture of both. So a good example of this is about 15 Confederate soldiers came off the battlefield at one point to where I was hiding out.
Right here, rally by platoon.
So they got in this huddle formation, and their commanding officer ordered them to hold that position, very sternly, hold that position. And then after a couple of seconds, took out his iPhone and took a picture. Took a picture of them in position. So nothing seems too precious, right? Where they are leaning into this time period and what actually happened in this battle, but they'll very easily break through that line and whip out their iPhone and take a picture of what's happening.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Deploy. Company position.
You're saying that it's become less political than they have been, at least from the perspective of the people who are doing them. But isn't the act of recreating a battle from the Civil War, I mean, isn't that inherently a political act? It's a really fun day. It's a way to interact with history that's super immersive, delightfully nerdy. But I wonder if it could also be a way to deal with this political weight that's more nuanced than, say, like putting up Confederate statues in public spaces that a lot of people are uncomfortable with.
Yeah. So I spent one day out there with reenactors. But what struck me about this world is that it doesn't seem to be static. It's, always overlaid with the time period, whether that's the 1960s or 2015 with the 150th or today. So it's kind of this living and breathing thing that can change, but is still very rooted in a specific place that is imbued with a specific history. It's also an event that has a lot of offerings. There were historical presentations about the time period, and then there's also folks who talked about having ancestors who were enslaved on this land and what that family lineage means for them today. So I would say that honor and education are the two primary things motivating people to be reenactors or to engage with this event. But ultimately, how each person embodies that honor and education is going to be really unique to them. So I think it's a question of what is being offered in a space like this, and then how you personally choose to engage with that.
It's a good solo.
Oh, thank you.
Would you ever do this?
I would go back to another reenactment, but I don't think I'm going to buy a uniform anytime soon and get out there.
You had enough of trekking through the woods.
I had enough trekking through the woods, yeah, and I had enough of cleaning some horse poop off my shoes. I'm okay watching in my bush off to the side.
This is delightful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for chatting about this.
This episode of The Broadside was produced by Charlie Shelton-Ormond, whose shoes, unfortunately, did not survive the experience. It was edited by Jared Walker. Our executive producer is Wilson Sayre. The Broadside is a production of WUNC North Carolina Public Radio and is part of the NPR network. You can email us at broadside@wunc.org. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a rating, a review, or share it with a friend. I'm Anissa Khalifa. Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll be back next week.
Find yourself looking for a new job or change in career? Monster.com is here to help. We are not only here to bring you job postings, but also AI interview prep and salary tools, expert career advice, and top-notch resume services. We've got everything you need to land your perfect job fit. Discover the magic of finding the ideal job with Monster.com. Your future starts now. Visit Monster.com today. Your next job opportunity is just a click away.